drug addicts, who are alcoholics, who are unhoused, who are living in that tent under the freeway. What do you say to them? What do you say to them? What would you say to them, Tucker Carlson? Are you going to say throw them in the landfill? Support the troops? Toss them aside? Hey, just get them out of my neighborhood, you disgusting creatures. Are you sure? Because last I heard, every time there's a Republican in office, they talk about how they support the troops and how they're doing all these things for the VA and they're doing everything to help veterans. Are they doing anything to help veterans that are in this position? Is it any fault of their own? Why are they in this position? How come our country hasn't accepted them back and presented them in the way that we should? Outside of seeing them at a grocery store or in the airport and saying, thank you for your service. You're welcome, but what about my life?
Yeah.
So that's a segment of the population. And if you only care about them, that's a different problem. Because the rest of these folks, every unhoused person has a different story as to why they're there. Maybe if you speak to one every once in a while, you'll find that out. Some of these unhoused folks aren't living in tents under the freeway. They're living on people's couches. They're bouncing around every other week somewhere else. That's also homelessness. I'm not sure if you know this, but the reason why people go from that to eventually the tent is because things get worse, because we ignore it. And then we give more money to the people who have too much of it and hoard it and make sure the people who have no access to it die. So that's why they haven't said it yet, because they're already doing it without having to.
You're right, 100%. We're running out of time. I just want to read one more graphic. Mehdi Hassan tweeted this, and I just couldn't agree more. In response to Candace Owens was on his show later on about the same topic and said that programs for the homeless are part of a plot to create modernized slavery based on government assistance. So Mehdi Hassan responds, I genuinely don't get how anyone cannot think that an hour of this stuff night after night from people like these beamed into millions of Americans' homes isn't one of the main reasons why America, and especially American politics, is in such a mess right now. Like we semi-regularly show you 30 seconds from a Tucker Carlson thing and then try to provide a counter to it and context around it. There are millions of people that sit down like in a Clockwork Orange and have an hour of this, more than that, because he has more than one show, directly sent into their brain. The damage that is doing to people and the damage that it's doing to the country is so clear. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have, but JR, I wanna give you this opportunity. What about the watch list, man? I'm hearing all these good things. I'm hearing a lot of hype.
Crazy, we're starting on Monday. We've been running test shows this week, again, why I've been up so early, and John sees me, comes in, he's like, oh yeah, there's someone else here too. Once I roll in, today I was behind him today. But no, it's the beginning of the live programming for TYT. Each day, 9 a.m., we're gonna start us Pacific time, noon Eastern. We'll hit the videos of the day, everything that interests you, things that newsmakers and people that have been watching. We're gonna direct you to that way. We're gonna do it fun. We're gonna do it serious. We're gonna do it the way that I like to do it, you guys. Nice. It's gonna be great. We're gonna take some deep dives and some analysis into things. We're gonna have a good time.
Nice. No, it's gonna be awesome. Everyone get hyped. It's coming up next Monday, and it's gonna be available every day at 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Very exciting. The only thing I can imagine that would be better is that, plus you being on our show on Wednesdays. So we will work on
hey,
that. Anyway,
exactly what I'd love. I'm looking forward to it.
Very exciting. Everyone, a reminder, Tier 3 Q&A is coming up this Thursday. So if you're already Tier 3 on YouTube, Thursday, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, you could also become Tier 3 and hang out with us. We'll chat about movies and books and fun and all sorts of stuff. You can ask me anything. You can already ask me anything, actually. On the community tab, we have a post for Tier 3 members to leave questions and topics of discussion available there. And Injustifiable says it will be available VOD too. That might be about the watch list, actually. But our thing will be, yes. And I'm assuming, yes, it's a TYT show. It'll be available on VOD for the watch list. And anyway, Indisputable is coming up. Don't go anywhere. Trey Crowder will be there. Twitchation room later on. So hang out on Twitch too. Until next time. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna be joining Anna for the second half of the Young Turks, as always, on Wednesday. But until then, stay safe out there. Stay sane out there. I'll see you soon.
Welcome, it is indisputable. Good to be with you. We have a lot on the agenda, a lot to cover today. Breaking down news of the day. I got the big homie, Trey Crowder, comedian. I call him comedian at large. I just like saying it like that. Also, in the debate segment, okay? We got Professor Dr. Alexander Salter, he's coming back. He's a PhD in economics. He's going to debate me about the inflation and also school mask mandates. He teaches at Texas Tech University. Top story of the day, Florida. Florida is pushing a law to make it illegal to make white people uncomfortable. Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's being pushed by the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis. This is really the most predictable bill of 2022. So let me give you some background to what they're trying to do. A bill being pushed by the governor of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, that would prohibit public schools and private businesses from making white people feel discomfort when they teach students or train employees about discrimination. In the nation's past, received its first approval on Tuesday. This is making it through the ranks of legislation, okay? The Senate Education Committee approved the bill that aims at critical race theory, though it does not mention it explicitly, as I've mentioned many times before. It never mentions critical race theory because that's not what it's banning. This fell obviously on party lines with Republicans in favor of this ridiculous legislation and Democrats opposed. Democrats argued the bill is not needed, would lead to frivolous lawsuits, and said it would amount to censorship in schools. They asked, without success, for a real life example of teachers or businesses telling students or employees that they are racist because of their race. So literally, during the debate about this ridiculous bill that would make it against the law to make white people uncomfortable, in the debate about the bill, Democrats said, well, okay, since you're so passionate about this new bill and you would like it to become law, can you cite an example of or two where this actually happened in the state of Florida. And no Republican was able to give example for any of it. The narrative goes on to say, the bill's not for blacks. The bill was not for any other race. This was directed to make whites not feel bad about what happened years ago, said State Senator Chevron Jones, who was black. At no point did anyone say white people should be held responsible for what happened. But what I would ask my white counterparts is, are you an enabler of what happened? Or are you going to say we must talk about history? Now, let me be very clear, okay? There are more than just white people or white bigots who are enablers of this madness. You have other groups, you have other ethnicities who also will buy into this foolishness and say that, critical race theory needs to be banned. Well, it's not even taught in K through 12 education. Now you're saying that employers cannot teach it to their staff. Well, once again, not a problem. But that's why the bill does not say critical race theory. This is a false pretext to create a context in order to do what they wanted to do in the first place. And that is to eliminate the acknowledgement of historical racism in the United States of America. That is it. That is their aim. That is their design. That is their plan. That is their play. Never forget why they're doing it. The bill reads in part, let me read part of this bill. It reads in part, an individual by virtue of his or her race or sex does not bear responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. An individual should not be made to feel discomfort, guilt, anguish, or any other form of psychological distress on account of his or her race. Now, I want to show you some irony here, okay? The state of Florida, they have not proposed a bill that would say, hey, it's illegal to say the N-word. It's illegal to make black people feel uncomfortable by white people hurling the N-word at them. It's no such bill. It's not even a bill to say, let's make it unlawful in the school system. No such bill. And I'm talking about teachers saying it to students. No such bill exists. You see, the discomfort that black people feel, well, there's a narrative that says we deserve to feel that discomfort. But literally, you have legislation being passed in the state of Florida that would make it illegal to make white people uncomfortable. That's the genesis of the bill. As noted by WFLA's Evan Donovan, Florida State Senator Joe Gruters has introduced legislation that would bar governmental entities from entering into agreements with professional sports teams. This is different, but along the same line. So there's this other bill that says if you don't play the United States national anthem at the start of each game, we will penalize you financially. We will no longer do business with you as a government. And let's show the picture of the guy who's sponsoring that bill. Here's the good senator out of Florida. That's Senator Joe. According to the report, teams that do not comply could face financial penalties or be cut from future business as punishment for their defiance. Now, these are the same people screaming that they are all about freedom, that they are all about choice, but they're not. They are about nationalism. All of these sentiments, all of these bills, all of this legislation points to one thing: nationalism in the United States of America. And we have to continue to cover it and not allow it to become normative. The day it becomes average news, the day we are not outraged by it is the day it's normal. We will not allow it to be normal here. Trey, what are your thoughts on this, brother? You see it for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, okay, first of all, on that first bill they've got, so I've got white children, shockingly, I got two of them. They're in They're in school in Southern California, but they're from Tennessee. They were born in Tennessee. All of their family is still in Tennessee. They have been made aware that Tennessee was on the wrong side of history back then. People, slavery was in the South. People in Tennessee held. So they've learned all this stuff in school because these schools aren't ridiculous out here, right? And they've never come to me with any sort of inherent discomfort over that. Like they've never come to me and be like, does this mean that we're inherently evil? Like children don't interpret the truth that way in my experience. So I don't think that you really have to worry about their precious little sensibilities unless they're going home and their parents are then laying all of that on them because of how they feel about what's being taught at school. So it's all really about the adults and their own insecurities. I grew up in Tennessee. I never felt, I didn't lie awake at night thinking, does this mean that I'm in the Klan and I never knew it? Because
right.
Tennessee was bad. Like I never felt that way either. So if you do, it just says something about you and how you feel about all those things, in my opinion. So it's all just like stuff they're making up, and pulling out of nowhere. Speaking of which, the whole national anthem thing, like that's not real. They don't need that. They don't need that law. I feel like that's what state level Congress people do all the time because they need something. I feel like they don't really have all that much going on. I'm sure there's important issues they could be addressing, but they'd rather just make up some crazy bill to get their name in the headlines because you got to find some way to make a splash at that level or something. So like in Tennessee, they try to make the Holy Bible the official state book, like anybody, like we need a state book or like they've ever cared about books before. So they just look for things they can put their name on, and they got to make these, controversies up out of thin air in order to have something. So,
and listen, you hit the nail on the head. These are ridiculous bills, but dangerous because there was a time these bills would exist on the extreme side of the conservative party. Now they are part of the mainstream matrix of the conservative movement, and it makes all of these bills quite dangerous. All right, there's a sheriff and a medical doctor who decided to experiment on incarcerated individuals and give them ivermectin without their permission and lied to them about what they were getting. Let's put up a picture of the sheriff. Let me start with him. The sheriff was aware of the experimental operation being led by a medical doctor that worked for him. This is extreme and egregious. We covered it when it first happened. Now, here's the update. The American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas, they have now filed a federal lawsuit on behalf of 4 inmates. More inmates were involved, but 4 inmates signed onto this federal lawsuit who claimed they were given the drug ivermectin to treat COVID-19 without their consent, okay? Now, here's what you're not gonna hear. You're not going to hear all of the people who scream, we're all about choice and freedom. You're not going to hear them say, well, this takes away their freedom, this is wrong and this is bad. You're not going to hear Trump supporters defend these individuals who were incarcerated and then lied to and experimented upon. The suit accuses the Washington County Detention Center and the Washington County Sheriff, Tim Helder, the picture I just showed you, and the jail physician, Dr. Robert Karras, and the Karras Correctional Health of administering ivermectin to the inmates without prior informed consent as to the nature, content, or potential side effects of the drug. It gets even deeper than that. Let's put up a picture of the medical doctor, okay? This medical doctor has a contract with the sheriff's office. The sheriff signs off on these contracts without the need of any bureaucracy. There is no vote from a committee. There was no recommendation from a board. He signs off on these contracts directly. So more than likely they're buddy-buddy. The FDA noted that ivermectin is not approved to treat or prevent COVID-19 in humans, and that the drug is not an antiviral medication taking large doses of this drug is dangerous and can cause serious harm, according to the announced statement. Here's what the Surgeon General said a little while ago.
Poison control center calls are climbing because what they're seeing are residents taking something called ivermectin, which is an anti-parasite drugs for horses and cows to treat coronavirus. This has even led to one hospitalization. Can you be clear for the American people on this drug?
Well, Brianna, that is heartbreaking to hear. And let me just say very clearly that ivermectin is not a recommended treatment for COVID-19. It is not a recommended drug to prevent COVID-19. The best protection we have against COVID-19 is the vaccine. And if you get COVID-19, we actually do have treatments that work, from steroids to monoclonal antibodies and other treatments. But ivermectin is not one of them.
So where's this madness coming from? You already know this madness comes from those that support Trump, those that are on the other side of the political narrative, those who would like to just be alternative, I guess, not follow the science, all right? The plaintiffs are Edric Floril Wooten, Jeremiah Little, Julio Gonzalez, and Damon Blackburn. They allege they were deceived over a period of days and possibly weeks after receiving high amounts of ivermectin. Now, this is a lawsuit so far. This should actually be a criminal charge, okay? So right now it is a federal lawsuit, but it should be a federal charge. Here's why. The lawsuit, which was filed on the 13th in the US District Court of Western Arkansas, states that the plaintiffs say they were given ivermectin as early as November 2020, but did not become aware of the treatment until July 2021. Instead, they were told their treatment consisted of vitamins, antibiotics, and other steroids. They lied to them. This is illegal. It's against the law. This should be more than a federal lawsuit. This should be a federal criminal charge. And it's not. You know why it's not? Because they were incarcerated. That's why it's not. Because if your medical doctor would have done this to you, your medical doctor would be arrested. If my medical doctor did it to me, my medical doctor would be arrested. This was a conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy. And because these individuals were incarcerated, they are not being given the respect they deserve. They will get that respect here. August 2021, at a county budget hearing, the sheriff, Tim Helder, confirmed that the correctional health company had been prescribing ivermectin as a treatment at the detention center. He admitted to doing it. The ACLU said in a news release, last year, the sheriff's office defended the practice to the local paper, saying that the treatment is voluntary. All of those who were incarcerated denied that. They were tricked, according to all of them. Trey, thoughts?
I mean, this is just like over the top evil, in my opinion. But I can't help but wonder, like, if it goes even higher, like you could see some like shady closed door meetings with like high level ultra conservative super PACs or something, where they hatched a scheme to try to prove the effectiveness of ivermectin through underhanded measures, and then somebody's like, well, I know we can just give it to prisoners. I got a bunch of buddies in the prison industry, we'll give it to them. Nobody cares about them. And then we'll see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then who cares? They're still, they're prisoners. Cause I have found I get annoyed by the attitude towards inmates and prisoners in this country on both sides. Frankly, not everybody, a lot of certainly on the right, but I know from having like a liberal fan base that sometimes I've posted stories about prisoner abuse or things like that. And I'll get people that are like fans of mine or self-professed liberals in the comments just not really caring too much, because America's got this really like punitive attitude. It's not about rehabilitation for anybody. It's just about punishment. The whole, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime thing. And people just get thrown in the trash in this country when they break the law. And it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. And maybe it's because, I'm from a white trash family with a lot of felonious behavior in it, including from my mama. Maybe that's why I'm more sensitive to it. But like, Yeah, I think it's one of those things that gets swept under the rug a lot, is how terribly we mistreat people who end up on the wrong side of the law, no matter, what their crime was, no matter how minuscule or what. It doesn't matter. If you end up in that position, there's not going to be a lot of people who are on your side, generally speaking.
We have to start speaking from a position of principle. Here's my principle. I don't give a damn what they did. I don't care what crime they committed. I don't care what they are accused of. I don't care what they've been convicted of. I don't care. What I care about is the fact that they are human beings, and we have a system called due process, and no one should be poisoned in the United States of America in particular, but no one should be poisoned by those who are entrusted by way of our tax dollars to take care of them. No one should have to go through that. So we'll see. We're going to continue to follow the story. There's a guy named Gary Chambers. Gary Chambers is a fascinating individual. He is running for political office, and he has a commercial that is going viral. He's smoking the ganja. Here it is.
Every 37 seconds, someone is arrested for possession of marijuana. Since 2010, state and local police have arrested an estimated 7.3 million Americans for violating marijuana laws, over half of all drug arrests. Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana laws than white people. States waste $3.7 billion enforcing marijuana laws every year. Most of the people police are arresting aren't dealers, but rather people with small amounts of pot. Just like me. I'm Gary Chambers, and I'm running for the US Senate, and I approve this message.
I like Gary, I like that ad. I think it's very effective. It's factually accurate, and it needs to be said. Glad he's running for political office. If he seems familiar to you, there's a reason why, all right? There was a viral video skyrocketed after he was in Baton Rouge and called out a member of the school board named Connie. Here it is.
So I had intended to get up here and talk about how racist Robert E. Lee was, but I'm gonna talk about you, Connie. Sitting over there shopping while we talking about Robert E. Lee. This is a picture of you shopping while we talking about racism and history in this country. Only white members of this board got up while we were up here talking too, because you don't give a damn, and it's clear. But I'm gonna tell you what the slaves, my ancestors, said about Robert E. Lee, since you don't know history, sister. Let me tell you that they said when he got the plantation, after he got off the field where 27,000 people died at Gettysburg, Connie, Robert E. Lee was a brutal slave master. Not only did when he whooped the slaves, he said, lay it on them hard. After he said, lay it on them hard, he said, put brine on them so it'll burn them. That's what Robert E. Lee did. And you set your arrogant self in here and sit on there shopping while the pain and the hurt of the people of this community is on display, because you don't give a damn and you should resign. You should have resigned 2 years ago when you choked a white man in his house. You should have resigned 2 weeks ago when you got on TV and said foolishness. And you should walk out of here and resign and never come back, because you are the example of racism in this community. You are horrible.
Many people, including myself, reached out to Gary during that time and said, brother, we need you to run for political office. And he is doing so now. There's more to the video though, here it is.
Now, when do we as Baton Rouge stop being in 1856? If you want to name the building after somebody, how about PBS Pinchback, the first black governor of the state of Louisiana, when he was governor during Reconstruction? You want another name? Oscar Dunn, who was the lieutenant governor of the state of Louisiana in the 1860s, that gave the right for Darius Landis and Don Collins and Evelyn Ware Jackson and Tramiel Howard to get here. You want to name it after somebody from Reconstruction? Name it after the people who fought for abolition of slavery. If you want to name it after somebody, honor the right people, the people who are on the right side of history. But it's your ancestor that the school is named after. So you're holding on to your heritage. But we built this joint for free. And we've done begging you to do what's right.
We need more people like that in politics, and less people like the corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. We need more people that are citizen servants. They are citizens first, they are servants second. It started from an authentic, direct connection to a policy or an issue that was right in front of them in their local community, and they got passionate They wanted to do something, so they went to their local leaders and they realized their local leaders won't do a damn thing because those local leaders are either there for their own agenda or for the agenda of somebody who's rich. We need more people like Gary. Trey, you like Gary?
Oh my God, I love Gary. I can't even tell you the last time I saw a political ad, campaign ad, even for someone like who I supported that I cared about at all. Usually even the ones on my side are kind of eye-rolly. This is like, I love this as much as I love most Marvel movies. You know, like I got fired up by this, dude. I got so fired up. I got a thing on my Patreon where I review politicians. It's normally reserved for conservatives, so I can just go off on them for 10 minutes, you know. But I saw this yesterday, and I love this so much. I made one covering this guy and talking about how awesome he is, because that's how pumped I was by seeing that campaign ad yesterday. We need a lot more people like Gary. I love how, like, clearly, like you said, it's a very profound argument he's making in the video too, and it is something that needs to be said, and it is based in facts. So it's like, and you watch the video about Robert E. Lee, and you can tell he really knows. He backs it all up by knowing what he's talking about. So it's almost like begging someone to call him like a thug or a dope head or something for sitting there smoking a blunt, so he can just then fire back at him and prove him wrong with actual information and just the passion of having lived it all and all of that. And also something I don't think got said yet, that's another great thing about Gary, is he's 36 years old. He's not ancient. He's not mummified like most of our, candidates for office. And that's also a huge thing. No, I didn't know about this guy until yesterday, but I'm already a massive fan of his.
Well, good. At least I know I got one new supporter for our dear brother. All right, we got more on the other side. Is indisputable, stick and stay.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you, or that you were
that it was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was the white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
An outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning.
You have the Young Turks and a bunch of other progressive forces saying this is the time to fight for our values.
And I think right now there are a lot of progressive voters, many leftists who feel like they don't have a home.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
What we've done is sustainable, slow, healthy growth. And I think that's the way news should be, where you don't rely on sensationalist stuff. You don't lean on whatever's trendy in the news at any given moment. You just go with the truth.
You gave me a platform.
You've uplifted so many other progressive voices through this network, and you're constantly looking for people that you can amplify through the work we do, through the infrastructure that you built at TYT.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
We're super serious about the news. We also managed to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We're not TYT, you're TYT.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one. Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
All right, welcome back. We still have a lot of show. Let me remind everyone of starting January 24th, J.R. Jackson, the big homie, the watch list. Make sure you tune in 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. This is a new 10-week test series on TYT. Find out what stories you should be paying attention to in news, politics, culture, current events, sports, and more. Here's how you support. 1, make sure you watch live and subscribe and follow at youtube.com/watchlistTYT and facebook.com/watchlistTYT. All right. Also, Twitchation Room, Francesca, that's next, right? 4 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you stick and stay for that. 1 p.m. Pacific time, that's a Twitch exclusive. Twitch.tv/TYT, guaranteed to be quite entertaining. Let me read some of these comments. TYT member Text Stand says, poor wilting flower racist in Florida. Are your feelings hurt? Good. Next TYT reporter says, I'm a veteran of combat and the national anthem bill is insane. I fought for freedom, not tyranny. That's right. That's exactly right. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, a candidate who actually speaks the truth, no matter how harsh, no whispering, just shout it out and hopefully some people will hear. There you go. All right. Kevs247, I think that's right. I thought Republicans were for free speech. No, they're for their speech. That's nationalism. All right, they're not for free speech. Bernie the Kiwi Dragon, Republicans are for flag worshiping, denying history, rejecting democracy. Sounds like a certain Eastern country they are adversarial towards. They are dripping with hypocrisy. That's right. Mike V, sounds like a Tuskegee incident all over again. And here's the thing about those some formerly incarcerated individuals. You have to remember there were more individuals involved. On the lawsuit, more people were actually involved. All right, Donald James XX, think about it. This could be one of us too. If you have enough passion, dude is giving me goosebumps. Boom, there it is. That's the idea. Gary is you. You are Gary. I'm Gary, you're Gary, right? We were somewhere minding our business and something caught our attention. and we wanted a change. So yeah, he should inspire you. He inspires me. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel great. Back off.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life. Post me. Post me. The Lord. We stand
waiting for this day.
You guys over there with your little symbolism with the little boy.
You mean this? You mean this school
stuff? Doing his little devil.
I think this is an elementary school, lady.
Oh yeah, it is a school. It starts in the school. Yeah, that's the sign of the devil. Yeah, they're all.
Welcome to TikTok, Missy.
Yeah, put me on TikTok. Have a field day. I have a voice. I have something to say. And there's a lot of people that want to hear me.
I do.
Oh yeah. You ought to.
Yeah. Shit, that was awesome. Damn, that was awesome. Any guesses? Anything to do with my outfit? That was awesome.
You know, I'm glad the encounter with her first Karen likely was not violent, okay? It is something to be observed when you are in the presence of Karenicity, especially if it is your first Karen, all right? This Karen believes that the young person you just saw was somehow making devil symbols and engaged in some kind of devil something. And that's about all I can get out of it. Trey, can you get some more out of this?
Well, no, I couldn't parse much of that, but I've noticed, I don't know if you recall, the past couple times I've been on here, we get to the Karens, and a lot of them have had accents. But like, remember the last time it was like this sort of bridge troll, Lord of the Rings type lady who spit a tooth out in the middle of her diatribe or whatever. And it just it almost kind of makes me feel a little bit better in a way, knowing that America doesn't have a complete monopoly on lunatic Karens.
Not at all.
You know what I mean? Like seeing one being like, oh yeah, you one of those vampires drinking the blood of children? Is it what's going on there? You know, just like hearing it with that accent, as opposed to the typical American accent. Just like, well, okay, so I guess they're everywhere. What was she talking about though? No, who's to say? Certainly not me.
Well, you know, I got something for you. Double dose.
Yeah. Let's do it.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel great. Back off.
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Our phone back, please. You do not have the right to have my phone with you. That's our property. I'm asking for it back. Now you're violating our rights. That's our property that you're having a hold of.
Oui. Chinois.
Give me the phone back. You know you don't have the right to do that. This is actually technically theft. Under $5,000. Yeah, I'm taking a photo. I have the right to. Yeah, I have the right to. I have the right to record everything that's happening right now. And you do not have the right to have our property with you.
The police, yeah, you have a serious problem, huh?
No, I don't have a serious problem.
And ask you for take a seat.
For what though, I said? I don't say I'm not going to waste my time.
Yes or no?
Give me my phone back right now.
Do you want to see a doctor? Yes or no?
Give me the phone. I don't want to see the doctor today with you guys. No, I don't. I don't. Give me the phone then.
When you go, I will give you your phone.
No, you give me the.
Oh, there's more. This Karen does the unthinkable with the phone. Here it is.
When you go, I will give you your phone.
No, you give me the phone, then we leave. How can we leave without the phone?
And the door. You want some problem? You will have. You have the problem now. Oh.
I'll just go grab the phone. Yeah. Oh, whoa, you're attacking me. Oh, that's assault. That is assault. Oh, look. So this lady just waved her hand at me. That is assault. That is assault. Right there. That is assault. 삼촌 내 지갑 잡아 저기. That is assault. Give me the phone, and I won't press charges. If you don't give me the phone.
She throws the phone in the trash can. She could have easily handed the phone to the young man, allowed him to leave. Let's put up a picture of this particular Karen in all of her glory. Yeah. She seems so sweet and innocent. I mean, does that look like the kind of person who would take your cell phone, hold it hostage, and throw it in the trash can? No. Trey is like, I don't know about that. I saw your face, you were like,
yeah,
I kind of could tell she would be that kind of person.
Yeah, she looks pretty straight down the fairway to me as far as Karens go. I'm not overly surprised by that at all, really. But it's like they've all got this sort of like citizens arresty type thing going on, where they think there's some kind of like morality police or something. And I don't know why, but I blame Nancy Grace personally. I feel like she was the proto Karen that sort of launched this whole thing off a few years ago. She emboldened them all. She's like the Nick Fury of the Karen world, you know. She just kind of assembled them all under the same banner or something. But yeah, I don't know.
You know, until this point of my life, I never realized it, but you're right. Nancy Grace was an ultimate Karen.
Yeah, and I feel like she was at the start of the whole Karen movement, you know? Like I remember before people were even calling them Karens, my wife was on some kind of community email chain and some lady was on there freaking out about loud music or something and wanting the cops called or something like that. And she showed it to me. And we didn't even have a word for Karen yet. But when that happened, I was like, this is Nancy Grace's fault. I could just sense it, but I could never sense the tidal wave of Karenicity, as you put it, that was coming.
Yeah. All right, we got more on the other side. It's indisputable, stick and stay.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
Our TYT audience has been building this show and this network with us for 20 years. Now we're expanding and connecting our audience around the world in even more exciting and powerful ways. Look, I don't want you to miss another petition, poll, community conversation, or TYT segment. Connect with informed, passionate, and compassionate progressives, and even new progressives. They're joining our movement every day. This is gonna be amazing when we work together. So our community members are learning together, they're building lifelong relationships, and even politically organizing together. Here's what Power Slave Wolf has to say as they begin interacting with our community after making TYT their #1 trusted news source. Quote, I've been a TYT viewer since the Obama years and have since found them to be a far more trustworthy news source than most TV news outlets. Away from viewing TYT, I'm a musician, electric bass guitar, sim racer, satire enthusiast, and rollerblader, the latter being my main means of intense exercise. TYT, my local news, none of the stations in my area are Sinclair owned as far as I know, and comedy style news shows are my trusted news sources. The former and the latter both having something in common in that both have something that TV news sorely lacks, a very low tolerance for BS. So sign up for free at tyt.com/community. We're making it easier to connect, stay informed, and even take action.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
All right, welcome back. We got a lot of show left. Let me read some of these amazing comments and we will get back into the broadcast. TYT member texts and says, hey Karen, even if she was making devil symbols, whatever that is, she's well within her rights to do that on the public street, I think. Yeah. Me can see the silver-haired dragon. Big grin on phone Karen's face. How pathetic of a person does one have to be to need an adrenaline rush from pretending to have power over another human being? And that was a real power trip, right? I mean, really, the whole cell phone thing and doesn't make sense at all other than you being on a power trip. YouTube super chat. Dark Angel 3 says, one never forgets their first Karen. Yeah. Prince of Judah 79, I would have just snatched it back. Talking about the phone. Twitch, Blue Lizard Guts. I cannot imagine not minding my own business so hard. I know it takes so much energy to be in the business of other people, especially that much. Sauce 240, she should put herself in that trash can. Yeah. Okay, here's an update. We covered this story when it first happened. Cops killed an 8-year-old child. That's the child. Let's put up a full picture, okay? I'm gonna give you some significant background to this story. They initially charged teenagers, kids, for this killing. So let me give you the update. Murder charges have now been withdrawn for 2 individuals accused of killing an 8-year-old girl at a Delaware County football stadium last summer. And instead, and this is what I said on day one, the cops have been charged with the murder. They are responsible for her death. The day I covered this, I said the police are the ones who should be arrested for her murder. Well, that has happened. Let's put up the pictures of the young people who are initially charged with this. Okay. Haseen Strand and AJ Ford were initially charged with the murder and the shooting death of Fantability. That's the young lady near the entrance of the Academy Park High School football stadium on August 27th, 2021 in Sharon Hill. Okay, there was a shootout. 3 officers, let's put them up, were monitoring the game. And the Sharon Hill officers, Brian Devaney, Sean Dolan, and Devin Smith fired back. The bullets from the officer's service weapon were the ones that killed the child, Fantability. and injured 3 others, could have killed more in the process, okay? Let's put up a picture of the young lady again, of the young child, okay? Here's why I'm doing this. Police officers are trained, are told, are instructed, and have a policy to not shoot indiscriminately into crowds or in crowded places. This is to make sure that they don't kill 8-year-old children, all right? They disregarded their training. Initially, everyone in the justice system tried to cover this up. They immediately charged others, even though you had 3 people who were wounded, you had a child dead. They came out initially and said, oh, no, these police officers, they were well within their rights and well within their authority to do exactly what they did. But people kept speaking up. You see, this is the power of you. This is the power of the people. Individuals in that community, media and other voices say, hell to the no. This is not right. These cops should be penalized, all right? The initial shots on Coach Street began with a verbal altercation at a football game between Angelo A.J. Ford, 16 years of age, and Sharon Hill and Haseen Strand, that's 18 of Collingdale. Ford remains charged with serious crimes for his attempt in killing Strand, all right? So they're charged with the right crimes. Let me make this very clear. They went altercation. There was criminality with that altercation based on the accusation. They have been properly charged with what they did. What the DA tried to do is charge them also with the murder of the 9-year-old child. That's not gonna fly because the bullets inside of her came from the cops, not from them, all right? Strand on January 18th pleaded guilty to aggravated assault for his wounding of a child bystander during the gunfight and illegal possession of a firearm. By the terms of his plea, he will serve a term of incarceration of 32 to 64 months in a state correctional institute and will remain under court supervision. Each officer has been charged with 12 criminal counts of manslaughter and reckless endangerment. That's exactly what they should have been charged with on day 1 for their actions that night. While the DA maintains that Mr. Strand is responsible for instigating the incident that left the girl dead, his office has been directed to withdraw the murder charges filed against Ford and Strand, all right? This is not a pretty picture. There are no good guys versus bad guys, but there is an innocent life who's dead because individuals acted criminally. And you have an innocent child dead. Now the system wanted to make sure immunity was granted to the cops who acted in reckless endangerment. They wanted to give them immunity. No due process, you simply get a pass, you killed somebody and you injured 3 others with your gunfire by violating policy protocol and you had a reckless disregard for life, but no problem, we're not going to charge you. Well, that doesn't fly. And now these cops are being properly charged as they should have been when it first happened. Trey, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, first of all, this is, horrible. I don't do well with stories like this generally because I got kids around this age, so it's just very sad. I guess the one thing that I thought about, and you alluded to this, I agree with you completely, is like, I do feel like not very many years ago at all, it would have been unthinkable that these cops would end up facing any sort of accountability. And now that seems to be happening. Like, I feel like just a few years back, if somebody told you, it's like, yes, there was some black teenagers got into an altercation, shots were fired. 3 nearby cops went full stormtrooper and just started spraying into the crowd and they killed an 8-year-old girl. I think a few years ago, anyone who was paying attention would have been like, well, I know what's gonna happen there. Those teens are gonna go down for all that. And the cops will probably get commendations. That's right. They certainly won't get suspended or face any kind of repercussions at all. And the fact that that is not happening in this case, it seems like there's still, a possibility for justice is, like you said, a testament to people not putting up with it anymore. Everything that's happened over the past few years and the protests and the outrage, the justified outrage. Yep. So like you could see it actually having an impact, which at least that is good. But I mean, it's just a terrible terrible situation.
It's an ugly situation. A lot of times in stories, we like clearly defined good guys and clearly defined bad guys. Well, sometimes you don't get those stories in life, okay? I think the right charges have not been applied. I think there was an intentional cover up to make sure these cops had complete immunity, and the community spoke up along with others in the media and those who were advocates on the ground. They said, no way, these cops deserve a penalty as well, and that's exactly what has happened here. Okay, Dan Crenshaw, representative out of Texas, gets into an argument with a child. He's wrong, she's right, and I got the proof. Here it is.
To give context to anyone who hasn't heard, Crenshaw said, quote, "The most important thing here is that we have important hero archetypes that we look up to. Jesus is a hero archetype, Superman is a hero archetype. Real characters too. I could name 1,000. Rosa Parks, Ronald Reagan," end quote. I can't wrap my head around this.
Well, I'll help you. Put a period after the word Jesus and don't question my faith.
Wow. You moron.
What?
Yeah, you don't talk to a kid like that. Boo.
Don't question my faith.
Oh, okay.
You guys can ask questions about all of these things and I will answer them. But don't question my faith.
I can question your faith if this is what you said.
I mean, you can read the quote again. But nowhere in that quote am I saying Jesus is not real. That's a ridiculous statement. Of course he's the Son of God. Of course he's the Son of God, and of course he's real.
You can say two different things. You can say that on a podcast, and you can say this here.
On the podcast, nobody would have understood it that way. I think you're twisting it that way. Which is not very Christian.
Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon.
It's not. And I'm not going to have my faith questioned. I'm not going to have my faith questioned.
You know, my grandmother would say a hit dog will holler every time. Okay, we have the actual footage of him saying exactly what he said he never said, which means the child who said he said it was quoting him correctly when she said what he said. We got the footage. Before I go to that, before I get to that, let me remind everyone that Dan Crenshaw has been playing a character. He has been playing this holier than thou Christian evangelical character that he believes in Jesus, white Jesus to be exact, okay, not to be confused with any other Jesus. He believes in white Jesus, 100%. So this person who has played this character for the sake of his political career actually said something very different during a program, during a podcast that he was featured on, all right? Let's go to the podcast, here it is.
The important thing is that we have societal hero archetypes that we look up to. Jesus is a hero archetype. Superman is a hero archetype. Real characters too. You know, we can name 1,000. You know, Rosa Parks, Ronald Reagan. All of these people embody certain attributes that the American people think this is good. Jesus is a hero archetype. Superman is a hero archetype. Real characters too.
That's what he said. Superman is fictional. White Jesus is fictional also. I'm a man of faith. I do believe in a radical Messiah of color. I don't believe in the white guy they paint on cathedral walls. But this is very evident that he believed at one point in his not so distant past that Jesus was just as fictional as the character Superman. Not only did he compare Jesus to another fictional character, he then contrasted both of those characters with what he called real characters like Ronald Reagan. She was right, he was wrong. A hit dog will holler every time, but he's playing a character. But here's the reality. Most of these cats in the Christian evangelical political movement, especially those who are holding elected office, they're playing a character too. They don't believe this. They don't believe in the values of Christianity or in the scripture. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they do all of that, right? And then they want you to believe that somehow they have been chosen by God, that they are special, that prophecy puts them in place, that they are more spiritual and know better than everybody else. The truth is they are charlatans. They are weak. They have to stand behind scripture in order to validate their own existence because their character will not do it for them. They stand on no values. They stand on manipulation. And he just got caught by an 11-year-old. Trey, thoughts?
I think this particular interaction was more about his his whole alpha male tough guy thing that he's got going on that he cares so much about. Meaning, like in his mind, it's just like it's just what you do. Somebody challenges you, you shut that down, right? Like that's what you do. And you make a show of toughness and just shut it down and look tough in front of everybody. But he's not like savvy enough apparently to realize maybe don't do that when it's a child who is challenging you. Right. You know what I mean? I feel like if he'd done this exact same thing at like a college with some like hipster 22-year-old or something posing this question to him, I bet he'd be getting applauded by people. But that's different. Children are different. And I think he was stunned at the reaction he got when he did this because he's just sticking to his normal playbook and he didn't think that it would be treated any differently, which is that's like borderline sociopathic, by the way, to not understand that somehow. But I feel like he didn't, and that's what happened here.
Yeah, definitely disconnected from the psychological and social moment, right? You don't talk to a child like that. And the child was correct. The young lady was right in what she said. Okay, we got a mystery. We're gonna bring attention to it. Let's put up his picture of this young man, Jelani Lovett. Let me explain to you the story of Jelani Lovett. He was found dead in his cell. He was in solitary confinement. And they're saying, well, he died of drugs. Now remember, he's in solitary confinement. The family is demanding answers because things are not adding up. This was in an LA jail, all right? Okay, Lovett was in solitary confinement at the time of his death. The day after his death, the detective from the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau informed Terry Lovett about her son's death. He said he was found dead in his cell at 10 p.m. on September 23rd. He told her that there was drug paraphernalia found in her son's cell and that the department was still investigating his death. Almost a month after the death, the family received photographs of Lovett from the coroner's office. The pictures, the mother states, were taken shortly after he died and showed bruises and possible injuries on his body. Remember, he was in solitary confinement, okay? Terry Lovett, that's the mother, believes that her son was killed by a subset within the sheriff's department that runs the jail called the 3,000 Boys Gang. We have covered some of these gangs right here on Indisputable. So named after the block of the jail that they work in. She alleges on a family organized GoFundMe page created to help the family during their bereavement that 3,000 boys are known to have ritual beatings of inmates as part of initiation ceremonies. We were actually able to confirm some of this in a previous show. She claims that there are at least 19 young black and brown who have been beaten to death by this same crew. Lovett's sister, Vanessa Carter, let me go to Vanessa, was one of the last people to speak to him before he died. She told The Guardian that she talked with him a few hours before he died and could overhear him arguing with one of the guards. The family believes that this adds motive to why the guards would beat him up and possibly kill him. The mother's lawyer, Christian Contreras, says that the sheriff's office operated from a place of negligence causing wrongful death. He also says that law enforcement is showing deliberate indifference and is in violation of the 14th Amendment, perpetuating the inhumane killing of an individual. The attorney filed in November a request for records. That's your open records request, hoping to get footage, reports, and the names of deputies involved. But like the family's request for details, this too was ignored. The coroner's office sent a copy of the autopsy to the Guardian on January 11th before the family or lawyer even saw it. Let's put up a picture of the Lieutenant Brandon Dean, who said nothing out of the ordinary happened and love is death. That was an exact quote from that guy. So let me set the scenario again. You have law enforcement executives coming out publicly saying nothing was out of the ordinary in this death. Nothing. He was in solitary confinement. You are alluding to a drug overdose. You are saying drug paraphernalia was found in his solitary confinement cell. First of all, that alone is not normal. That alone is not normal. He's in a controlled environment, and in a controlled environment, inside of a controlled environment. He's in solitary confinement. This is a real mystery. What happened to this young man? Because they're not providing any conclusive evidence that something normal took place here. Trey?
So I don't even know what to say, but this is just like, this is crazy. And more people should be talking about this. You got literal gangs holding like beat-ins, initiation ceremonies on inmates in prisons in this country. That's like truly horrific and needs to be talked about more. I first started reading this story, the initial details, and at first I was like, how did he possibly OD? I thought was the question. And I was like, well, I mean, I know that people can still get drugs in prison, but then it keeps unfolding and it's like, okay, no, this is some truly insane stuff going on here. So I mean, I hope that it continues to unravel, because I mean, yeah, it's very alarming, and that type of thing can't be going on, obviously.
Let me say this for the record. If you're in solitary confinement inside of a jail, you have virtually zero interaction with other incarcerated people. So if he actually did have drugs, he got the drugs from a CO. Right. A corrections officer gave him the drugs, all right? If he had drug paraphernalia, he got it from a CO, because solitary confinement keeps you separate from others inside of the facility, except for interaction with your CO. Okay, all right, brother, always a pleasure. Tell people how they can follow you, check out your great work.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. You can just look me up by my name on the internet if you want. If you want to come see me live, you go to wellreadcomedy.com. If you're not down with that, that's fine. Maybe holler at me on Patreon.com/Trey Crowder. Support me that way. Either way, yeah, hope to see you out there on the internet or the real world. Thanks for having me back.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you, sir. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yeah. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not Ben Mankiewicz.
Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Hey,
Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Craig starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high. Snoogans?
Snoochie Boochies. And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join and free trial. I'm old school with the old folks. Good.
John, come back!
Field goal here. It's time to switch to beer.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Do your best.
He's a little like...
Oh. No one's happy now.
Give him another try.
Oh. Wow.
This is the weirdest game.
I'm Brett. I would like to refer to this segment as the Do I Still Have This Talent show. So I want to see if I can play harmonica without my hands. I don't know why I have that. Nothing's gonna be more impressive than that. I can also spin a basketball on my finger. While drinking? While drinking. I'm gonna spin a basketball on my finger while drinking apple juice. You can do this, dude. It's also flat. I don't know if that helps or hurts. And it seems to be somewhat wobbly. Ta-da! Nope, I don't know how to do this one. This one's a fail. Nope. Oh God, I'm so mad.
Yep, good to be back. Okay, let me read some of these amazing comments. Got a lot of them. I will read as many as I can. TYT member Just Be Anti-Racist says, it's been reported the cops fired 25 bullets while the boy shot 5. That's correct, all right? And that was part of the outrage from the community, is the carnage and the carelessness and the reckless disregard for life from the police officers. The people who did the initial shooting had more regard for human life around them than the police officers who responded. Isn't that ironic? Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon, don't question my faith. She didn't. She questioned your statement about Jesus being an archetype that's not real. Poor typical right-wing whiny crybaby can't handle being faced with the truth, even by a child who obviously threatened him. I mean, the guy said it, and literally, she quoted it verbatim. I mean, you should applaud this young person. The first thing you say in a situation like that is, listen, I applaud you for being masterful in your research and having a well thought out question, and it's a relevant question, right? And then you answer the question. But he didn't answer the question. He doesn't have a real answer for it, other than, hey, listen, I'm playing y'all. I'm not really a Christian evangelical. That's the only answer you can have at that point, or you were playing the people on the podcast. One or the other here. Colorado Blue Blazer, don't call the man Cyclops. You can't do that. Crenshaw tries to say that he meant Jesus is real. Then he has to explain how he thinks that Superman is real too. That's why it's no good answer for the guy. I mean, this 11-year-old stumped him. Finish, it's over with. I don't want a guy representing me who cannot answer a question from an 11-year-old child. Democrat or Republican, I don't give a damn. I need you to be able to answer questions from 11-year-olds. All right. The Fantability shooting. Susie B says the same charges should be filed with a girl who was preparing for her quinceanera and shot by cops in the mall in the dressing room. I remember, yep. Yeah, and we are following that. So we've already done 2 stories on that. We did the initial, then an update. So we'll continue to give you the developments as they come to that story. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. He's back. We got the dear professor, Alexander Salter, economics professor at Texas Tech University. Very smart guy, has a lot of educational credentials, and we are going to chop it up about mask mandates in schools and get into some of this inflation stuff happening in the country. Professor, we're Facebook friends now. Did you know that?
We are Facebook friends. I'm very excited.
You know, I accepted you because I knew you're going to be on the show, and I didn't want to be rude. So I accepted your friend request. No, you're a good guy, man. You're just misguided on some politics. But let's talk about your sentiment. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about. We'll start with mask mandates in K through 12 education. So share your sentiment with us.
Sure. In brief, I don't think that mask mandates in K through 12 are very effective. I don't have any reason to think that they are particularly useful at stemming the spread of the virus. And to the extent that we roll those back, however, I want to make sure that we do that legally. It needs to be done through the established legislative and executive processes.
All right. So there was a report that came out about a month ago that showed the effectiveness of schools that enforce the mask protocol. Now, while it does not eliminate the spread, it does decrease it based on comparative data from school districts that simply do not have a mask protocol in place compared to school systems that do. So there's an effectiveness. Is it 100% effective? Of course not, right? You're still dealing with people who do not exist only in the context of a school system. They exist in the ecosystem of life. So they go home, they have a peer group, they have parents, they have after school jobs, whatever it may be, they interact with other people. So you would agree, Professor, that having a mask policy inside of your school, while it does not stop, it does in fact reduce the spread of COVID-19, correct? Based on data.
I'm sure there's some effect. I would tend to say that cloth masks are probably a little bit better than nothing, and N95s are better still. The question is, are they worth the cost? If we have kids constantly worrying about fiddling with their masks instead of paying attention and getting the most out of the learning environment, if we make teachers constantly monitor this to make sure that students are quote unquote wearing the masks right, when you take into account the fact that now that we know children seem to be one of the least at-risk categories from any of the variants of COVID-19, I just don't think that the benefits of school mask mandates outweigh the costs. We need to make sure that our children are getting the education that they need. They should be there to focus on school and not worry about these secondary requirements, especially after the last 18 months, which have been very hard on school children in particular.
You brought up an interesting point, Professor, that I would like to challenge you on. You call children the least at risk. Who's the most at risk?
The most at risk are the elderly, and then also people from the general population that have some other health problem. We usually call them comorbidities.
All right. Do children interact with their grandparents or parents?
Certainly.
Do children interact? Okay. Mm-hmm. Do children interact with individuals that may have pre-existing conditions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I bring that point to your doorstep because we're not dealing with a health problem. We're dealing with a public health problem. We're not dealing with a health crisis. We're dealing with a public health crisis, which means all of our policy should be implemented based on the public health concern rather than the individual concern of a particular person. And that is the difference between a public health crisis and a personal health crisis. So when you say, well, children are least affected. That's fine if you're only talking about it in the context of a personal health issue, such as your personal medical doctor. But when you talk about it in a broader context of public health, professor, you then have to include the reality that children touch things, that children interact with people, that children go homes where they have elderly grandparents, parents, aunts and uncles, etc. That children interact with family members and friends that may have pre-existing underlying conditions. That is the reason you have policy, is for the general public, not for the individual. Where am I wrong here?
I think you're absolutely correct that no man is an island. We understand that there's an issue about transmission. We understand that there's an issue about one person infecting other people, sometimes without even knowing it. What I want to fall back on, though, what I want to talk about is the fact that we know through several studies that schools just aren't super spreader events. So if we're serious about masking our kids when there doesn't seem to be major contagion happening at school, we should be even more on board with masking up everywhere all the time. But I think that we know that we're past that point in the pandemic. I think that we understand that that's not the optimal strategy. Maybe if everybody had resources to get an N95, and if maybe everyone was using them with medical grade filters, if everyone was using them perfectly, like a surgical team does in a hospital, maybe then we could talk about the benefits of widespread masking outweighing the costs. I just don't think we're there anymore.
So let me say this from experience. So one, you're not correct on the super spreader element. You do have school systems that based on their testing, they were getting 20 to 30% positive rates, and they had to shut the school down. That's considered a super spreader event anytime you're over 15%. So that has happened, and that continues to happen even now. As far as the masks are concerned, I actually agree with you. I do think that we should continue the subsidies, the federal subsidies, to make sure K through 12 education, if you're gonna meet in person, you have the proper mask attire, and you can subsidize that to the general population, because people are going to buy different masks based upon the information that they have and the resources they have available. This to me is very simple. It's not complex, we make it complex. It's real simple. We believe that it was in the interest of good public health doctrine to vaccinate children and to mandate these vaccinations. We have been mandating vaccinations in the United States of America since 1850. In 1970, it became rule of law for all 50 states and the District of Columbia to mandate a plethora of vaccines for children: diphtheria, measles, mumps, etc. We accepted that as a public health issue, right? So it's interesting to me that individuals who have accepted that line of thinking to say, yes, school systems have the power, and truly it is the right thing to do to mandate vaccinations for children, are the same people saying that wearing a mask mandated by a school system is not proper. I don't understand the logic, because both are public health policies and both are implemented or authorized by the school system by way of mandate. But one is actually intrusive. A shot is intrusive. A vaccination is intrusive. A mask is not. So why the different line of thinking as it relates to mask, and not that same line of thinking as it relates to the vast vaccination mandates that have been around since 1851?
Great questions. I think we need to take two separate questions here that are there. Okay. One, you want to make sure that you're doing all of these decisions, whatever they are, through established procedures. You want to make sure that if it's something that requires an act from the state legislature, that you actually do that. You don't want to necessarily have governors who are in faraway state capitals just issuing executive orders willy-nilly without respect to the facts on the ground. So I think that you and I would agree with that.
Yep.
With respect to the other vaccines, I would note that we've had decades of evidence on the effectiveness of the polio vaccine, for example, before we required it for public school students. I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, I'm comfortable taking this stuff. Nonetheless, this is still an experimental drug, an experimental treatment rather. So I think that we shouldn't be too gung-ho about requiring that people inject themselves with this if they have some
But we're not talking about that, Professor. We're still talking about the comparison of mask mandates, not vaccine mandates for COVID, but mask mandates in schools. You may have an issue with COVID-19 mandates, that's fine. I can argue that the science has been around for 22 years and that's used in the COVID-19 vaccinations, and it has been tested thoroughly and even more so than many of the other vaccinations, in particular polio in the United States. And polio was a disaster in the first 2 years of its rollout. And I'm sure you know the science on that, but we've accepted it as normative. So when it comes to masks are non-intrusive. I still speak in high schools. I still speak in elementary schools. And when they thought they had a grip on it, right? People were coming back to the classrooms. I was in those schools and I was speaking to students. They had their distance, they had their mask on. And I got to tell you, brother, not one school classroom that I spoke to had a problem wearing a mask. I did not see people taking it off. I did not see young people fiddling with it, none of that. I mean, they were well behaved, okay? So I don't get the logic of saying school systems have the power to enforce these other mandates, dress codes, other mandates as it relates to vaccines, but they don't have the authority, or somehow they're wrong for saying wear a mask for right now for the sake of public policy in health.
I don't disagree with that point. I think that it's established law that school boards have the authority, or school districts, or whoever's making the relevant decision to have the authority to require masks.
Yeah.
I'm saying that in my view, requiring masks in K through 12 school children just doesn't pass the cost benefit test when you think all things are considered. I'm not saying it's illegal, I'm just not sure it's expedient policy.
All right, well, I do disagree with you on that point. I do think the benefit far outweighs the discomfort momentarily. And children are very adaptable. They can become accustomed to environments very quickly. And 52% of parents are for the school system having these mandates. Only 28% of parents of school-aged children oppose them. The others are indifferent to it, but they would like the school system to make the choice themselves and not executive orders like you said. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation is happening in the United States of America. Give me your thoughts about that. You are the PhD in economics here.
Too much purchasing power, chasing too few goods. In some ways, we haven't really advanced any beyond what Milton Friedman taught us decades and decades ago. On the one hand, we have lots of boosts to demand. Normally, government spending, fiscal policy doesn't do all that much to boost demand, but I think that the COVID direct checks are an exception to that. I think that those probably had an effect. Of course, you had extraordinary monetary policy by our central bank, lots of liquidity in the system. Add that to the supply constraints, transportation gridlocks, all other sorts of problems with the supply chains, and the predictable consequences, prices go up.
You know, brother, I agree with virtually 100% of what you just said. The problem in the narrative is that individuals would like to be not authentic in their argument and debate about it, where they would like to blame Biden, right? Well, you can't lay this solely at the feet of Biden, because while I disagree with some of his policy positions, he has attempted to do things in order to ease the burden of inflation in the United States. And yes, the number one catalyst for inflation is basically a supply chain issue. And that supply chain issue, it takes a process to get that right. And inflation also carries kind of a natural reset in the American economic system. And you see some of that reset happening. Why do you think conservatives are so quick to forget about the 4 years of Donald Trump and how inflation takes time to set in? And they squarely blame Biden for the inflation issues that actually started to permeate during the Trump administration.
Sure. I think everybody does it, if we're being honest. I think conservatives do it. I think that liberals do it. I think that too many people have this expectation that the president of the United States, whoever that person happens to be, has direct control over these things like inflation, like gas prices, these ordinary 10-cent things that mean so much to ordinary Americans that are really due to global economic forces that are very difficult for anyone, even someone as powerful as the president of the United States, to control. I would like to see us as a nation have a more realistic perspective on what the president can and can't do about the economy.
Yeah, and to Biden's credit, he did release the reserve on the gas thing to try to ease the cost, drop in the bucket, you know. Professor, always a pleasure having you on the program, man. Thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure, thank you.
All right. Remember, Twitchuation Room is next. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.
Before